So, David Jaffe, let's get into why I think this is particularly interesting. I made a video about him earlier this week where he basically tried to imply, because he's being passive aggressive as well, that people who don't want to buy, like Star Wars Outlaws or Dragon Age the Veilguard, well, they're just bigots, or maybe they hate black people, or maybe they hate women, or whatever it is. But he didn't like directly do it, because then he could get called out on it and he would actually have to defend himself. So instead, he just implies it and then he lets that sit. It's very cowardly. It's very sad. And it's not true. I mean, like, no one can make you buy something. And then he tried to make a video it was all cope, where he was like, you guys are missing out on like a good story. Don't you want a good story? I thought you were gamers. And it was really pathetic. And then
this is, some woke white woman bullshit.
Yeah, and then recently, well, I made a video responding to it, and I put some links in the description of my video where I initially talked to David Jaffe way back in 2014, and I'm bringing this up because I want to talk about what's happened since then. So I don't know if you guys know this, but when I spoke to David Jaffe in 2014, it was in the wake of some pushback he got during Gamergate 1. From the media, like, that was basically trying to frame him as sexist, but also from Gamergaters that their heckles went up when he called something sexist that couldn't possibly be sexist, and he didn't understand where it came from. And I invited him on, and he agreed to come on, and he'd been on our show 3 times back in those days. But at the time, he was trying to make the case that sexism is bad because I have daughters, and he had like 2 daughters. Okay. And of course, most of the people who host the show with me are women as well. Not that it should matter, but they were essentially like on making the case against feminism and like against these notions that are sort of built into our consciousness, by default, about like the relationship between men and women. And he was not really that receptive, but he was at least cordial. But at the time, he was defending his daughters, okay? Now, what's happened since then? Well, I'm glad you asked. David Jaffe, one of his daughters is trans now.
Right.
And I'm going to share this video. It's kind of short. Well, it's like 5 minutes, but I'm going to go ahead and share it anyway, because I think that we should see this. And this is him. He's saying, this is in 2023. I am the proud dad of an amazing trans son. Either get on board with it or unfollow me, because I can't with these people anymore. What you think is sport or fun is actually cruel to your fellow humans, including kids, ! And I can no longer engage with folks who engage with me in bad faith. Remember, for pointing out that like your kid should not be considering transition, that's the cruelty.
Yeah, you're a parent. You're supposed to steward the young and the naive and the inexperienced to a point that they, through their own discernment,
not
make
pruning your kids. No, that's not the cruelty, right? It's the fact that we have opinions on it that don't support your child unquestioningly, and you don't know. And this is where the sunken cost thing comes in. So on Honey Badger Radio, I talk a lot about men's rights and men's issues. One of the biggest issues that we discussed is male genital mutilation, also known as circumcision. But we call it male genital mutilation because it is traumatic, it is unnecessary, and it should not exist, okay?
And it causes a whole bunch of issues with sexual relationships people have nowadays. Because I mean, like, part of the reason that men have so many, like, sensitivity issues and this and that is because, quite literally, like, part of their body, their anatomy, was stolen from them before they could defend themselves.
And one of the other problems with this is kind of like a similar situation to our food, where a lot of people who think that they are doing what is best by buying food that they think is healthy are actually consuming food that is basically poison. But it's not their fault because they don't know. And they're trying to do their best, right? And they're not informed well, because like who decides like what is healthy? The Food and Drug Administration, the FDA.
But they're captured as fuck.
Absolutely, and they have been for a long, long time. So what happens if you invest in an idea that you think is good, but it turns out to be absolutely disastrous, and someone tells you that you have made a mistake? Well, most people are going to respond unpleasantly. Okay. And this is why I mentioned circumcision. So back in like 2014 or 2015, when I was doing Honey Badger Radio, we were talking about circumcision. There was a viral video that was going around of an intactivist. Intactivists are basically guys that they're activists that support the banning or ending of circumcision. Okay.
Yeah.
And
one of my friends
they're called
one of those.
Oh, you're in oh, that's cool. So an intactivist wants to keep boys intact. That's where it comes from. And he was on the street, and they usually, some of these guys are, I think they're called like the bloodied men. They wear all white and have like a blood stain on the crotch area to sort of like, you know, that's how they get attention. But there was one guy on the street, and this father approached him and threatened him with violence. He threatened to kick his ass because he was saying, did you circumcise your son? Because he was up there making the pose, and the guy's like, what are you guys doing? And it turned to an argument, and then the intactivist said, did you circumcise your son? And the dad, the father that was passing by, he basically attacked him. He tried to assault him.
Right.
And the reason for this is because he did circumcise his son.
Yep.
And he doesn't want to face what that means. He doesn't want to face the reality of that. So David Jaffe defends pronouns because he agreed to transition his daughter. Right. And he is going to realize that he was wrong, and it's going to be very painful for him.
Yep.
Yes.
And when you think about, like, when it comes to like the thing you're talking about, just a quick little tangent side note, you know, one of the people who drives forward the whole aspect of, you know, circumcising children is Oprah Winfrey. She quite literally sells
she sells their foreskin cream. Exactly. Yeah, we know about that. We know about that. And I bet that's just the tip of the iceberg, no pun intended.